What up, world? I just wanted to say it's been a while since I actually made a video. I want to say a couple of weeks now. In case some of y'all haven't heard, I had a passing in the family of my uncle, which I'm not sure if you know. He used to wrestle for WCW and wrestling back in the day with Hulk Hogan and Macho Man and all those guys. So he passed, and so that's been a struggle in its own. And then on top of that, we just had Hurricane Florence, which basically just like hit us direct on. Like literally, I was right in the middle of it, and it was intense. They said it was supposed to be a 4, but it ended up being like a 1 when it came in, so it wasn't too bad. But I mean, the outside areas, they got it got catastrophic, and a lot of people have been without power and all that, so or lost everything. So I was actually very, very fortunate to not, have any issues. I don't know what I would have done if I ended up losing all this stuff. I mean, I would have made it back anyway. You know what? Side note, I think I want to change my hat. I think. Yeah, I like this better. This works. All right, so today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 things that I wish I knew when I started photography. And I hope these will help you become a better photographer yourself, because, it's better to learn from other people's mistakes. And I know each and every single one of these that I'm about to tell you, I've definitely made my fair share of mistakes on them in the past. And some of them I'm still guilty of to this day. Like I'll mess up and, over edit something, or accidentally work non-destructively, or I didn't check that I was in RAW instead of JPEG, or whatever the case may be. So let's get into it. Number 1, we're talking about shooting manual and not program, not auto, not one of those fancy little, quick shot modes. Although they do have their time and place. Like if you're running around, you're just traveling, and maybe you just want to do this as like a hobby. Yeah, sure. The landscape mode, boom, it sets all the settings for you. Open up that aperture, click, one shot done. But I prefer to shoot manual because it enables you to have so much more control. So you can set your custom settings, like your shutter, your aperture, and your ISO, which your shutter just is the speed of the shutter closing. So the faster or slower it goes, up and down, up and down, up and down. So your faster shutter speeds, say like 1/250th of a second and above, or even 1/25th of a second and above, are good for like stop motion. So say you're trying to capture the waves of the beach, and you want every single wave sharp. Boom, you do a higher shutter speed. So say you're shooting a nighttime shot where you have the city lights, and then you use that 250th of a second shot, and you're like, it's really dark and I can't see nothing. So if you drop that down below 1/60th of a second, you'll get that nice long exposure where you'll be able to capture all the light coming in. Now once you go below 1/60th of a second, I was told back in college that anything below 1/60th, you need a tripod. Your handshakes can't function below 1/60th, for those long exposures. That also brings you into your aperture settings, which is the amount of light coming into the lens. So the wider it is, and it's a weird thing in photography where it's like your wider shot is usually like the smallest aperture, and then the widest aperture number is the smallest. It's weird. So the more light you let in, that gives you that nice bokeh, like that smooth buttery bokeh, the smaller your aperture, which is why some lenses that you'll see like an 85mm with a 1.4 is like $1,800 or something like that. Whereas if you get like the kit lens, which is like 3.5 to 5.6, it's probably like $75. It's that 1.4, it's that small little aperture. Well, not really small number aperture, but wider opening. You get what I'm saying. So that gives you that nice little bokeh, and the wider you go, say like f/22, which is for those landscapes. The lower your aperture, the bokeh is mainly for like portraiture and stuff like that. So that also brings into ISO, which is a dangerous little territory, I feel. ISO is the speed of the shot. Now, some cameras these days have been getting better at this. Like you can shoot maybe, I think all the way up to like 64,000 ISO or something like that. But the problem that you're gonna have is, yeah, you'll have more light in the picture, but once you get to that level, you're gonna have noise problems, you know, all that, and moire and all that kind of stuff that you don't really want. So I tend to shoot at like 100 ISO or 200 ISO, somewhere around there. Now, this is completely a different video, but this is where variable ND filters come in, which I'm using right now, and they are a lifesaver. I'll do a video about that at a later time. This video is running on way too long as is. Number 2 is shooting RAW over JPEG. Now, when I started photography, and I was a victim of this, I did not know the difference or the benefits of shooting RAW. I shot JPEG on everything because I was like, oh, if you shoot JPEG, you can get more shots, you know, and I'll just shoot uncompressed instead of compressed. So I just shot JPEG, JPEG, JPEG. Before I started shooting RAW when I got to college, and I was like, oh, this is why. So now, later on in life, I'm going back into these images, I'm like, oh, let me rework them. And it is a nightmare trying to work with a JPEG picture from the past through like camera RAW. It's just bad. So my tip to you is just use RAW for everything. Just the second you get your camera, flip that to RAW, call it a day. Whether or not you shoot in program or manual, always shoot RAW. You will be very happy later on when you have to go back and do something. So that's a quick and simple one. I'm definitely victim to this. I did it for years and now I'm kicking myself. So on to number 3. Number 3, we're going to be talking about framing your shot. And the main thing I'd like to get across is you want to use the rule of thirds. Every single camera has them. I put it in my camera by default, like they're the grid lines, you know. Depending on if you're vertical or horizontal, you have 2 lines, 2 going up and down, and 2 going left and right. So therefore, that puts you in three spaces: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it enables you to frame your shot with a horizon line. So this is what I do. I end up taking the 2 lines, whether it's, say I'm doing a landscape shot, I'll make the horizon line up with the bottom line and the top line, or each of one, you know. That horizon line goes on one of those 2 lines. Say whether it's a portraiture or if it's a focal point that I'm using, I'll put it on one of the other 4 intersection points. So there'll be like one here, one here, one here, and one here. So therefore it all lines up perfectly. And that is why I use the rule of thirds. And another thing, I made a, this is me being an amateur photographer. Back in the day, I used to not frame for the shot. And this caused so many problems later on. One, I had this brief time of like, I want to say like a couple of months where I shot everything on like an angle to get the maximum amount of, I'll show you, like this. But I got out of that quick. And then the second problem I was doing was I was taking the full sensor size and I was shooting, say, you know, I had the head all the way up here and then the feet were like right here. So therefore, if I wanted to zoom out or zoom in and post, I couldn't crop because I was cropping off feet, which that's another problem, is I was zooming in on weird angles and such, and I was cutting off limbs, you know, because I was like, oh, that's cool. No, it's not cool. There's 3 types of shots you should do, which is the portraiture shot, which is the head shot. Then you got 3/4, which is above the knee but below the waist, like that point to the head. That's 3/4, and then you want to do full body. Never cut off like a photo of the hands or the ankles. It looks weird. Don't do it. And then we got shooting angles, where this is a really cool concept that I wish I knew starting out, but I only started doing in the past couple of years. And that's shooting angles. Now, you could either shoot high going low, shooting head on, which looks like a dialogue interview. Unless you're doing headshots and stuff, it works. And then there's shooting low up. Now, that's my favorite type of shot, because when you shoot from the ground up, like looking up towards somebody, it puts them in a position of power, you know, like a superhero or like an official, or, you know, any of those positions. Now, if you shoot from up going down, yeah, you can get some good shots. Like, you know, if the model's like laying down on the wood thing and you're shooting overhead, you can get some good shots. By all means, don't limit yourself to one type of shooting technique. There's benefits for each of them. But if you're shooting up looking down, it kind of like makes them look small and like kind of makes them look small and depressed, and it has the opposite feel of like looking up like a superhero, like a position of power. It has the opposite effect of that. We're gonna get into tip number 4, and this is what I call over editing. Back in the day when I first started photography, like the beginning, I was like, oh, these magazines, like I want to shoot just like this. I want to get these types of shots, and like it had all this like blur. They used like Gaussian blur. I still can't say that word correctly, but they over blurred things, and it gives it that like Barbie doll look, like that complete fake skin look. And I used to do it all the time. Now, I'm glad that I got out of that early, but don't fall into that trap. You don't want to do that. You want to edit your photos in a way that they look as natural as possible. But okay, so let's just say that what I do now is I'll take all my photos and I'll put them in Lightroom, and then I'll like edit all the colors with my presets, which I'll link down in my description below. I have a preset pack that I sell on my website. So I actually take all my photos and run them through Lightroom, get them all color corrected, cropped and all that. And then if they need a little bit of extra, like a liquify, or they need to remove some blemishes, or I need to do just a little touch of Photoshop, I'll throw them into Photoshop and do that. But most of the time I don't have to do that. So you always want to make it look as natural as possible, but give it a little spice, like just a little pop, you know, like a little pop. Also, on that note, you don't want to work destructively. Now, what I mean by that is every time I work on a photo, so this is going to go into tip number 5 with organization, but what I do is I'll actually save in a folder raw images. Then what I do is I'll bring those raw images into Lightroom and I'll work off of them, but I won't save on those raw images. What I do is I take it and I export it into a separate folder called Lightroom. So now those are all the retouched Lightroom photos. So the raw will always stay raw. Those are the files that you back up. Those are the files that you keep, the main ones. So now at the Lightroom, I'll bring those images from that folder into Photoshop. Now, when I go into Photoshop, I always, rule number 1 on my list every single time, I duplicate that layer. Duplicate it, lock it, duplicate it, lock the original, and then turn it off. So therefore, no matter what, if I go too far, I'll be able to go back to the original, and it won't be destructive. I have fallen victim to this because back in the day, I used to work on those main JPEG images that I got, because I shot JPEG and not RAW. Those main JPEG images, and I saved on top of them when I didn't know what I was doing. So now, if I go back to try to cover some of those photos, they're gone. They're just, and with my level of skill back then, they retouched, looked like a Barbie doll. Like, let me see if I can, I'm gonna try and find one. Let me see, it's somewhere on here. Let me find it. Yeah, you could see like that. It's kind of embarrassing to look at this old work and to where I'm at now. So, but yeah, you don't want to work destructively. Whatever you do, make a backup of a backup and then work off a copy. That's what I do. That's what you should do. Be safe. All right, now the last tip that I'm going to give you is my file organization system. And this is what I do. When it comes to photos, I organize them in my photography archive, which I'll try and find it for you right here. Just waiting for this to load because, you know, it's taking a while. Adobe programs, sometimes they just take some time. I probably should have had it open already, don't you think? Maybe? I guess I should prepare for these videos a little bit better sometimes. Alright, now we're actually going to get into it. Check this. Alright, so we're going to go into, this is how I set mine up. I have my not photography, but I'm running low on battery. I gotta hurry up. So we're gonna go into this, and this is how I have mine set up. Don't ignore these. These are just my retouch ones up here, but through everything, I have everything labeled with a name. First thing is a name. So we're going to go into, let's just say we're going to scroll down here and we'll go into, let's see who we're going to pick. Who we're going to pick? Who we're going to pick? Let's pick my friend Melissa. Okay. So see, I have everything organized by date. See, it says like 2010, July 2nd. So therefore, every image in here, this is a bad example because I don't have any Lightroom folder, but whatever. It would be like right here. So we're gonna go into the raw images, and then all of these are raw images. This is where I keep them all. Boom. And then what I would do is I would open them up in Lightroom, and then I would export them into a folder that doesn't exist, which is right here, the Lightroom folder. And then, no, this is really this is really a bad example, but I just wanted to show you, like, I have each of them set up with a date. So like, say if I go into, say, 8/6, which is August 6th, and then they would all be like 2010, August 6th, shot number 14. So therefore, when you're saving all these final images, say like in here, so these are new edits. Now, I'll never have to run into the issue where, or I'll never have to run into the issue like this. This is a perfect example. See, this is what I used to do. I would actually name them with the name, like Agnes 07, like that would be shot number 7, but it would be different than the file name that was raw, a JPEG version of a JPEG, and then I was running to this issue where shots just wouldn't line up. But, you know, you can see the point of what I'm trying to make here. All right, so let's back out of this and go back to whatever. Okay, so those were 5 tips that I have for you for a beginner photographer. I gotta hurry this up because I see that little red battery low going on in the camera right now, and who knows how long that's gonna last. It might just cut me off. So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna bring you more of these videos. I'm gonna try and do, you know, 1 video per week right now with this day job, and hopefully I'm looking into getting the Sony a7R III camera, so I might do some upgrading. Can't wait to shoot that for the 4K vlogs instead of this, you know, 1080p vlog, you know, whatever. So if you like it, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace.